Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to start in a second, so feel free to jump into the session, get a cup of coffee if you like, and we'll be with you in a moment. Beautiful. So we have a lot of people join us today, so let's get started. Welcome to our webinar. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited for this session today. This session is about breaking the bad training habits in course design that anybody who has worked as a trainer really has done at some point in their lives. I'm not only excited about the topic we have, but also about the guests we have. You see already that I'm not alone here, and you'll meet our experts in a moment. So let's get to know each other. I'm Theo. I'm part of the customer education team, and I'll be hosting the session today alongside Jason. Jason has delivered awesome training and is an expert user of TalentLMS. But not only that, Jason has more than 20 years experience in learning and organization development. So when I tell you that he's been a victim of those habits, but also found creative ways to overcome them, trust me, he does. Jason, welcome to our webinar. And I think we cannot hear Jason yet.
Yes, and I was
There
muted,
you
but
go.
thank you, Theo. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. And often I'm asked, Jason, you say you've been in learning development for over 20 years. How many years over? And really, isn't that enough? Come on, don't age me like that. I have been involved in e-learning in particular for since the early 2000s. And not only have I been an instructional designer and made every single one of these mistakes and 1,000 more, I've also dragged organizations kicking and screaming into the world of blended learning. And I'm excited to be here and share some of the pain that I've lived through.
Perfect. And thank you very much again for sharing your expertise, especially as somebody who has applied your remedies on TalentLMS as well. So we get to see a bit of advice, of course, and a bit of demo and tutorial as well. So without further delay, let's just remind you two things. The session is recorded, so you will receive the recording once the session is over. Now, sharing is caring. So feel free to share the recording with anybody who might create courses for you, or anybody who has created courses for you in the past, and generally with anybody in your team. And we are here to also answer your questions. Now, behind the scenes on the chats, Irini, our talented trainer, is also answering your questions. So feel free to click on the Q&A button to send us your question. And of course, you can also do it anonymously too. But me and Jason will do our best to answer a few questions live as we progress. So Jason, I'm not gonna continue talking. I'm gonna mute myself for good. And then we're here to just find out what's the very first habit that we have to break.
Thank you, Theo. And I think the first and biggest mistake that we make is not looking at an overall strategy. Often we get these projects and we say, okay, how do I build this solution without thinking about how else are we going to use this? And really what we should be doing instead, because I don't know about everyone else on this call, but I know we have limited resources, limited time. So we really should be designing and developing once and then using in multiple ways. And what that means is we need, when we're designing a course, we really should be looking at what am I going to do with each one of these units and how can I reuse it? So for an example, one of the things that we do is we think about it in terms of Legos. So for example, I have a son, and when he was little, he would come to me and say, Dad, I want a helicopter. And those of you with kids out there, you've lived this. You go, you get them a helicopter and they play with it for a while and then they get bored. And that helicopter goes in the corner, right? That happens with some of our courses. On the other hand, if instead of getting him a helicopter, I get him a box of Legos, then we can build that helicopter together. And now he has a helicopter to play with. When he gets tired of that, he takes it apart, then he builds it into something else. And now it's a house, now it's a car, now it's a spaceship. That Lego concept is how we should be designing our content. So we break our content into small chunks. Those are our bricks, right? So for example, if I'm doing something on voice tone, maybe one brick is inflection. Another brick is the nonverbals, right? Smiling. How do you hear a smile? These things. So now what I can do is I can put all those bricks together in order, and guess what? I have a helicopter called onboarding training. On the other hand, I've got Theo, who's been with us forever, and he's having a hard time with pace. Well, if I give him the whole voice tone course, he's going to phase out on the parts that don't matter to him, that don't apply to him. On the other hand, I can take that single unit on pace and add whatever else he needs and create a custom course, a personalized course for him. And Theo, we've got some great ways to do that within Talent LMS using cloning, linking, unit design.
Exactly.
Right?
So let me share my screen and let's jump as an instructor. And what we will apply here is exactly what you said, Jason, being able to create content that we can use again and again and again to build different courses, but of course for different purposes as well. So I'm going to show you an example. And if we navigate as an instructor into the, for example, remote onboarding for new hires course, and I'm pretty sure that in hybrid environments, everybody has a remote hire that's at some point they need to onboard. What's you see here is what's Jason described. So we have created chunks of content as you see under sections that we can use and we can repurpose. And how do we repurpose content from other courses as well and bring it into this one? For instance, if I go to clone and link, these are the two functions that we are looking for. If I click on clone, for instance, I will be able to create a duplicate of a unit of another course. So bring my Lego bricks into this specific structure that I'm making. So if I get to the essential soft skills course, for instance, and get the asking the right questions unit right there, if I clone it, I can embed pretty much the same content in that course and the one I'm creating right now. So essentially now new hires during the onboarding, they need to learn how to ask the right questions, but at the same time, my salespeople also need to know the essential sales skills of getting information from the lead. And of course, what you can do is you can edit and you can make any changes you need to, just because you will have now a brand new unit, which is a duplicate of the original one. And of course, you can save and view it, or you can save and continue editing. Now, what's the difference with linking? Well, when you clone, as we said, you create a duplicate. But sometimes you don't need to have duplicate, you just need to distribute the same content at different courses, but at the same time, when you make a change to the original content, to make the change simultaneously to the rest of the courses. So while you clone, you create a completely different copy of that unit. When you link, if I go right there, and I'm going to do it with the exact same one just to show you the difference. Again, from the same course, if I get to asking the right questions, you link it. You see, this is cloned, so that's a separate copy. This is linked. So now, if you click on the link there to go to the original part where you get this from, of course, any changes that you will make to that specific unit, that will reflect to anything else that it is at the same time linked. So
And
you have two
Theo,
ways.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just to point out, because this is a great technical explanation, from a design perspective, these are very powerful and important tools. So, for example, let's say that you have something from one content from one department that isn't exactly the same as another, but the base is the same. You can clone that, and now that department can make whatever changes they need. From a design perspective of thinking of the overall images or the overall concept of what we're doing, linking is powerful because one of the biggest challenges in the reuse strategy is keeping things up to date. When you link it, it's kind of like having your own content management system built into your learning management system, because what ends up happening is that content can only be edited from the original, but that means you don't have to keep track of where all your units are. When something updates it, you update it once, and now wherever this unit lives, it's up to date. So this really makes it easy to plan and say, okay, I'm going to use this in several different ways, and I never have to worry if it's out of date.
Yes, exactly. And the most important part is, especially when you have an organization that's at some point it's so big that you have forgotten how many
Mm-hmm.
copies you have. When
Yeah.
you link a course, sorry, when you link a unit within a course, in the original unit that you started linking, you see here there is a number where you can click and you can see all of the linked units that have been shared from that specific one. So essentially, if you need a quick report of where have I linked this video, thankfully here is this just one course, but if it was 60 courses, then you could see all of the 60 courses that would be sharing this specific unit as well. So this is already one habit that we've broken. So let's
Yeah.
see what's next. Especially, I think in the instructional design community, the key word that everybody has been saying is interactive, and it has turned into a hashtag, right?
It has, and I have very strong opinions about this. So, the easiest way to create any type of quote unquote learning is what I call the click and drool or the watch and drool piece. So really, a click and drool or a watch and drool is when I read, click. Oh, watch a video! Yay! Right. I'm not doing anything with the content. And to make it even more interesting is that they're really what I call two types of interaction. There is the fake interaction, which is the, hey, is everyone awake? Are you still with me? Which would be something like, oh, here's a definition, click for more information, or here's some images, click each one so you can continue to read. That's not true interactivity. Interactivity is when the person is, by definition, interacting with the content itself. So, for example, maybe I have to have my people learning what it means for each code, what that means in a CRM. So I have, for example, a problem code, issue code. Okay, well, how does that react to what the consumer is actually saying? Well, we can do that in a drag and drop interaction. So we can say, hey, this is what this means. We drag and drop it in there. We can do something like, here's what do you think good interaction looks like? And then give them an opportunity to type their answers. And then they can compare it to a real answer, to a targeted answer. Or maybe it's even a, how would you respond to this question? And then they have to use the previous knowledge, the things we've already talked about within that to answer that question. So really, we have to be interactive. Remember, people learn through application by applying the knowledge and being able to do it as quickly as possible. And Theo, we can do some of that in Talent LMS.
Yes, we can. So let me just navigate away from this course, and I'm going to come back to this one because I have a question for you that is
Sure.
brewing within me. But let's go to a different course. Let's go to working efficiently together, and we will actually see what Jason has just suggested. So first, the poll. For example, you want to ask a question about how to build interaction, and people can answer as just a primary way of getting what they already know, what they already feel about the topic. So with Talent LMS, what we've done is we have added a survey here. And from there, you have the option to create different types of questions. It's the same survey that you would use for feedback, but it doesn't have to be part of feedback. It can be
Right.
used in different ways and different perspectives. So just because it's a survey, it doesn't mean that it only has to sustain a question such as, did you like the course? So applying what Jason said, we are creating a free text question right here. So essentially, what the learner will have to see is the survey. And of course, you can change the text and the word survey right there. So that is it. What practices would you use to build interaction between you and Sysdom team members, for example? And then, of course, you can submit your answer. You can write anything you need and submit. And then the interaction keeps being built by checking yourself what type of answers you have provided with what the original content should be or what the educational opportunity that you have there is. So then you get to a content unit with images, for example. So if I said, for example, that building interaction means to be cooperative together, to work nicely, and to be motivated, I already just got one out of my five supposedly correct answers in there. So by writing what I feel it should happen, then I get to the next part of the content, which is of different format. And that way I can also remember, what did I type before? Is it something that's, did I predict the content, if you want? And
And
yes, go ahead.
yeah, and Theo, I think one of the ways that you can connect this is we have a lot of people that come from synchronous or instructor-led learning into this asynchronous, self-paced world. You can liken this to the discussions that we lead in person. So we'll often kick off a topic and try to connect previous knowledge, right? Part of retention of information. We do that by saying, so team, why do you think this is important? Well, this is the same type of interaction, even though it's asynchronous.
Exactly. And that brings me to the question. You can't, are inside my mind today. Just because the next thing that I was about to say, what about asynchronous teams? So that's exactly what we are looking for. Interaction in a different way than just being part of a self-paced course. So
Absolutely. And just one more quick thing is, don't forget that we can set up tests to be the participant can't move on till they get the correct answer. And that is a great way to provide interaction versus just testing. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that too when we start talking about the importance of discovery learning. And this is a big mistake that I think we use is we just try to give information to people and expect them to learn it. By the way, that's more training than what I consider learning. So think about how you learn. We learn by making mistakes. We learn by doing. And again, any of you that have kids, or those of you that were kids, which I think is everybody, right? How many times were we told by our parents, hey, don't touch that stove, it's hot. Don't touch that stove, it's hot. But that's not how we learned the stove was hot, was it? Theo, how did you learn the stove was hot?
well, by having my mother yelling to me, go away all the time. And then she was running toward me. So the moment I heard the voice, that's where I would touch the stove and then run before she catches me.
Right. You learn stoves are hot by touching it. So why do we expect our learners to just learn something by being told? They have to touch the stove. And that's what we mean by discovering learning is we give the basic concept, we give the background, and then we let them make the connections through trial and through error. We talked earlier about reason codes in CRMs and how people learn them. Well, why wouldn't we give the basic concept of this is what reason codes do. This is why they're important. But instead of giving a list of reason codes and saying, hey, memorize it, let's use the hot stove methodology. going back to the drag and drop interaction, now we can give a list of what the codes are. And then maybe we have, if we're a customer service organization, have the consumer says this, drag that and drop it to the correct subject code or reason code.
Exactly. And I'm going to show exactly what you just said on screen. Uh,
Beautiful.
and first, I'm going to answer a question from an anonymous attendee who not only hears what we say, but also like reads on screen, which is great. So I think that's our friend here missed the last two C's from my slide. These were the ones: continuous development and cooperation. Now, what Jason suggested is this. When you complete, for example, this specific unit, you have the drag and drop. So how do you put this into practice? For example, you have the terminology on the left and what it means on the right. And then you have the option to go ahead and match the pairs as you see fit. I'm pretty sure I don't have the right answers right away as I'm doing it on the spot, but that's exactly what you do. You submit that, and then when the answer is incorrect, you try again until you find out. And you see that here it says submit test. It's what Jason suggested about tests. It doesn't have to be a test in terms of evaluating you. It can be a test instead of just trying, failing, and then redoing it again. I'm going to show you the setting for that because I think that this is something that can really boost the interactivity right there.
And before you show that setting, because that's a test level setting, from the question level, don't forget you can also provide feedback. So that it doesn't just have to say incorrect answer. You can also provide feedback that gives them hints to the right answer.
Exactly. So let's start with this one. If I just go, for example, to add a test right there, or if I hover on this one to edit it, again, don't worry about the word tests. You can change it as well. That's part of the settings that you can use. But now going into the question itself first, as Jason suggested for feedback, you can edit it. And then you see at the bottom, you have feedback. And this is a feedback that can apply to people who have failed the question or people who have passed the question. So you can always just give a tip, if you like, on what the topic of the question is, just additional set of resources or an additional tip about the topic. But moving forward and turning this test into an interactive learning method than just an evaluation method, if you jump into the test options right there, you can, first of all, not have any pass score because we don't care about that. It's not about grading this time. And you can allow people to repeat it. You can show the given answers or you can hide them. You can hide the score, which is what we've done here. You can hide the incorrect, correct labels. And the most important setting is this one. Check answers and do not continue until the correct answer is chosen. I think that's your favorite, Jason, right?
That is one of my favorites because it turns what would be a knowledge check into a learning experience. One of these settings that I do suggest to pay attention to is I know that a lot of times when we typically do tests, we won't allow repetition or we'll limit the number of attempts. When you're using the test as a learning interaction, that should be set to always allow repetition. Because remember, this is a learning interaction. So what we want is we want them to do it more than once. Because, right, and oh, by the way, we want them to do it more than once, not necessarily back to back to back. Right? The concept of spaced repetition. They do this same exercise today. Maybe it's like, oh, how did I do that again? And they go back tomorrow and they're able to do that same exercise. So when you're using tests as learning interactions, it's important that we always allow repetition.
Yes. And there's literally no other way of learning. Now, going back into what we touched upon before, and that's going to be hybrid learning and pretty much blended learning with interaction, physical interaction, remote or on site, doesn't matter. I'm going to go to another course right here, and I'm going to show you what briefly, again, we discussed before, but now we can definitely elaborate a bit more. So I remember Jason mentioned that you can use instructor-led training And you can use discussions as well as part of steering the conversation to the direction that it should take for the content of the meeting. So what we've done here is we have embedded a discussion right here before the live session. I'm going to show you how that looks, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to set it up. So if I get to the part of the course as a learner and I'm right here, what you see is a forum pretty much, which is built within TalentLMS. We call them discussions. And that can be anything that you would like on the topic, maybe a way to collect questions, maybe a way to collect maybe other resources that people have shared. You see, you can attach things. And then when you comment something or when you like somebody's or you can interact on the comments that others have left, you can complete it and go to the next part. And here is the live session. So you can register if you haven't. And when the time is due, you can always click the join button and jump into the session, having already been prepared with the rest of the questions and what the topic will be about.
And
Now,
oh, I'm sorry, Theo. Go ahead. I
uh,
I just wanted to talk when you get a chance. I want to talk about the design function of that.
perfect. So let's go with the design of action because I'm going to bore everybody with settings.
Okay. See, team, I'm saving you all from settings. So a couple of things about the discussions is it's not only is it a great way to get scheduling and things like that done, it's also a great way to encourage peer learning. So you should be throwing questions out to start discussions and have people working with each other on that as well. You talked about, we call it blended learning when you're combining asynchronous self-paced with the synchronous or the instructor led. Here's something to think about. Remember at the beginning we said think big, think holistically. This is a case. A lot of people will put all my topics in all these topics in asynchronous, the self-paced, and then we put different topics in synchronous, and there we go, we have blended learning. That's not blended learning. Blended learning is when the content continues from one part to the other, right? So for example, maybe we have some really fact-based things. Great, let's put that in the asynchronous because that allows the learners to go back, to review, do that at their own pace. But then we discuss the application in person. One of the things that we like to do, for example, is that we talk about these are how you ask probing questions. Write some probing questions. We do that because we're a customer service organization. So we'll do that in the e-learning. But that's only half of the job. The other half is how do I ask these questions? How do I interact with the people we're speaking with our consumers? So that carries over into an asynchronous piece, which we schedule through the live training session. So I complete the basics of how do I create a probing question, and then we role play it. This can be very efficient. This is a great way to be able to spend just less time out of production and yet be more meaningful in what you do.
And you mentioned a very good keyword here, which is role play. So definitely within the live sessions, you can role play 100%. And what you can always do though, is you can use assignments to do that asynchronously as well.
Yes.
So let's jump onto this course and talk a little bit about how we can do scenario-based practice pretty much, because it's great to be ready to do it in front of a live session, in front of an audience maybe, but then you might want to have a bit of practice beforehand before you feel confident to jump into the, let's say, group live session and then start interacting there. What I would suggest in this case is using assignments. Again, when we talk about assignments, you see it's in parts close to the test. So you think, okay, I'm going to get a grade for that. You don't need to get a grade for that. So you can add an assignment unit like this one, for instance, and I've called it, what would you do? So that's literally just a practice scenario. And there you can set a scenario, for example, in the course about working together. How would you motivate a member of the team who expresses concern about not feeling fulfilled in their team? Feel free to upload a quick video or an audio answer. And then what's the learners of the course would have to do is really either, okay, if they want, they can type a reply, but at the same time, they can upload video they've made outside of Talent, or they can record a video right here on the spot or an audio, maybe for the more shy ones. So you always have different ways to interact and kind of like do it live, but not really on the spotlights as of yet.
And Theo, you're bearing the lead on this one. Not only can we do this, not only can they record this sort of thing, but we can also, Theo said, do we grade it or not? You can always provide feedback. So you can review these and then provide coaching, provide feedback to the participant who completes this. I should real quickly address record screen. When you have people recording screens, make sure you're not make sure it doesn't provide any proprietary or privacy information with the recorded screen. So just wanted to,
Yes,
I had to be
100%.
hate to be the killjoy here, but we have to talk through that.
Yes, yes, 100%. And of course, assuming that this is training that you do within your organization, definitely, everybody is on the same page about getting data out of your organization. I can
Correct.
definitely, of course, assure you that Talent LMS is compliant with the privacy and the terms of condition regulations that exist. So that is something that you can always rely on. But of course, I wouldn't screen share my clients' data, definitely not in any training, pretty much.
Exactly.
So another question for you, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel that somebody would provide feedback? What would be the best way to provide feedback in those type of scenarios? Would it be to get a meeting with them in person, or would it be, for instance, to verbally or basically on paper here, on digital paper provide it? What's the best course of action for this?
So it's contextual, right? So it depends on what it is. You can give feedback within talent. I'm a huge fan of some type of face-to-face feedback, whether it's in a virtual Zoom meeting or Teams meeting, whatever it is, giving feedback that way. And the reason that's always my go-to is that communication is always a two-way street. And part of any type of engagement strategy is giving people the opportunity to respond. And I said context is king is important, right? The context of why the learner did something is just as important as what they did. So if it's something simple like, hey, don't forget to smile more when you're speaking, right? Maybe that doesn't have to be a, hey, let's chat, let's just a quick piece of feedback. But when it's something more involved, and by the way, you did an outstanding job, that should be face to face. Because if you've completely dropped the ball and you're completely lost, I'm going to make that face to face. Why do we sometimes think that letting people know what they're doing right, in other words, what behaviors should you continue to do, that's just as important. And I'm getting a little off topic here, but this is critical when we're talking about learning, is that we often coach and we just talk about, oh, you need to do this better, you need to do this better, do this better. And then we wonder, wait, last time we had the talk, you were doing all these things well, but you stopped doing them. Why? Because you didn't tell them they should continue that behavior.
That's 100% the case. And we really, especially in these days now that everybody's rushing, everybody's trying to get things done. And of course, especially when deadlines are quite short, we try to fit as much as possible. But then what do we fit? Do we fit
Right.
the right, the wrong, or a balance of two?
And
So
it's both. We give
yes,
feedback to both, because when we're super busy, that means we can't correct something later on because they were doing it right and they stopped doing it because we didn't tell them to, any more than we can continue to not address things that they're not doing well.
yep, 100%. And what you mentioned before, I'm gonna again hang from that phrase you got. Content
Sure.
is king. So I have a question for you. What can we do to make content more interesting? Can we personalize it? Can we share something more unique? And my second question for the $1 million, what do you think about AI? Is it going to do the content for us or not?
Okay. Two huge questions. We're going to start with the first one because, I remember when I first started writing as an instructional designer, writing content, what was my model? The textbook, because that's what I had through school. And so that's how I thought, oh, professional learning should be written like a textbook. Yawn. When we are, especially in e-learning is learning, it's not documentation. If you write like a textbook, you're going to lose your people. It should be conversational. It should sound more like the discussions we're having here and less like step by step by step content. Part of engaging is conversation. So your text should be fun. It's okay to have a bad dad joke in there. It's okay to make them groan a little bit because, really, Jason, you went there? Right? Meaning a dad joke. Because that's how we engage. If this were a completely dry, so Theo, what we're going to do here is everyone on this call would be tuned out. This energy, this excitement, it should translate into your e-learning. It's okay to use contractions. It's okay to be conversational. And in fact, you should. Now, you asked me, what do I think about using AI? I think of AI as a partner, a brainstorming tool. So if I'm stuck on something, then I can use AI to help me with that. Whatever the AI produces is a very, very rough draft, because it's going to sound mechanical. B, AIs hallucinate. In other words, AIs will make things up. So we have to do that. And C, although there are prompts you can write to make it so that it's a little more conversational, so that it can be in your theme, it can be in your tone of voice, etc., it really is not going to completely fit into everything else you do. So you're going to have to rewrite what it creates. You also have to have the expertise to understand, is this really what we're trying to do? Right? Because the AI can't do that. The other thing the AI is good for is being an editing partner. For example, if I'm accustomed to writing as if I'm writing a textbook, that's okay. If I need tips on how to make it more conversational, AI can do that for me. Again, though, we should never be taking something and say, I need content on this. Great, AI spits it out perfect, copy and pasting, I'm done. And there's a lot of fear over whose job are we going to have instructional designers in the future, or is AI going to replace us? AI will streamline things, and yes, it's going to impact certain jobs. But if you're a true instructional designer who understands how instructional design works, whatever you do, whether you're using AI as a tool, which you should be, your job is secure because AI is never going to be able to replace your tone, your experience, your understanding. So I actually encourage people to learn how to write prompts. And, one of the things that I wish that Talent LMS had a tool built in so that I wouldn't have to go outside of the tool to use AI for brainstorming or as my editing partner.
Yes, thank you so much, first of all, for believing in AI, because there's a lot of people who say, no, we shouldn't touch it, we shouldn't do anything. But the key here is to go along with technology, learn how to use and leverage it.
Yes.
And then at the same time, of course, you provide the expertise as an instructional designer. And of course, you can use the tools in a way that fits your expertise in your designs.
And Theo, the same things that we hear about AI are the same things we've heard about computers, right? Oh, everyone's going to lose their jobs over computers. Who makes it are the people who learn how to use it. And I think one of the biggest things that not only can we help for our workforce, but for ourselves is learn about prompt engineering. How do I create the right prompts?
So working with computers, here we are, all of us together on the laptops. I'm
Exactly.
gonna actually share with you, and I think, Jason, you might be actually getting what you're wishing to have a tool within Talent LMS that works with AI.
I'm
So
listening.
drum roll, I'm gonna switch to Talent LMS Plus Beta. So we have released an improved version of Talent LMS, an updated version of Talent LMS, which is Talent LMS Plus Beta. And you can, of course, enable it on your accounts and switch and try it at any given point. We have the ability as instructors there to create courses with Talentcraft, which is our AI boosted content creator. So I'm going to show you exactly what we're talking about. I'm going to go to a course, and you see how different that looks, but it still has the power of Talent LMS. And I'm going to go to my last updated course right here, and I'll find the Working with Talentcraft course. So just go and edit the course, and you will see on the left, I have a Talentcraft unit. I'm going to show you what that looks like. It is a complete authoring tool pretty much within your course. And you can always collapse the sidebar right there. And what you have here is lots of different types of content which you didn't have before. For example, different list making options, or text and images, or one of my favorite ways of learning. Of course, you can have graphics, but I'm going to slide to my favorite part, which is the flashcards. So you can, of course, have a prompt on one side and then have the content on the other side. It is what we're trying to do as well as maybe with drag and drop, maybe with match the pairs. So you can always self-test yourself in what would be, for example, on relying on AI mean, and then you would see the content. But
And Theo, real quickly, I
Mhm.
see this. I'm sorry, I'm getting excited. So this is actually, remember we talked about the what do you think interactions. So I would love to put up here a big question, a big high level question like, what do you think the future of AI is going to bring to instructional design? And then the check yourself, where I'm checking for targeted responses, is on the back of this. Love it.
Yes, yes, that is definitely something that would really make the flashcards work with the same mentality of checking yourself and having a prompt that will actually allow you to do that. But talking about the AI, so where's the AI right here? First of all, you can create a brand new unit using the AI. So if you see on the bottom left right there, we have the option to write contents, create an image. So you don't even have to bring your own images now. Create flashcards, post processes. These are all different types of contents that you can use. Tabs, another type of content. So I'm going to show you, for example, let's go create tabs. And you see my prompt here. So I'm going to do cybersecurity at work. And I know that this is part of compliance training that everybody has to take at some point. So this is where you can start, exactly as Jason said, have it as a base for what you will develop on top of that. So you see it's creating the tabs right here. And the tabs is actually a way of showing the key points for a topic, but not just have them as a big block of text. So you can always see that you can switch from one point to another. You can add an image if you like, which you can have from the library, or you can just upload, you can create an image with AI. But most importantly, you can even improve the writing that you have done. So for instance, let's say that I have created a content unit, maybe this one. So be mindful when using AI to write your emails. And then I don't want my tone of voice here because I wrote it just focusing on the content and not focusing on making it, let's say, matching the rest of the tone of voice, or just because it's not my strong points right at the moment. So you can hover and you can select, and then you have more options with the AI here. So you can improve the writing. Definitely can improve my writing, eh? I can tell you that for now. You can continue the sentence. You can make it longer, shorter. You can fix spelling and grammar. You can obviously tell that I'm not a native speaker, so I might have forgotten a few, P's and Q's right there. Or I'm definitely not a native speaker of many languages. So if I want to change this in Spanish, Japanese, Portuguese, German, anywhere that you have learners in the world, you can, of course, go ahead and translate that. And that will allow AI within Talentcraft to translate that. So you're not going to lose your job as an instructional designer, 100% not, but you will be more efficient if you go with the, with the times and really use the prompts as you need to.
Yeah. And Theo, I think just something to remember is that AI isn't fire and forget. Anything AI produces, updates, changes, needs a human to double check, especially some of the translations, although they're much better than they used to be.
Yes, 100%. And I'm just going to go in the Q&A section, if you like. And I have a quick question from an anonymous attendee. They're saying, to clarify, how do we use beta in the admin and instructor modes only? So my friend, first of all, what you have to do is I'm going to leave the beta right now for an instance, and I'm going to show you how to start using it. So within the legacy, within the current TalentLMS account that you have the option to go to TalentLMS beta on the bottom. And of course, here it has a button that says activate TalentLMS beta. And then, of course, you have the option to go to try it as an admin and, of course, do that as an instructor. What you might want to also know, though, is that this will also be available for the learners. So what you could do is you could have a look at the beta, see if that fits your learners view as well. And then, of course, you will be able then to implement the beta to admin, instructor, and learner. In fact, I'm going to tell you that the Talent LMS Plus beta for the learners is what came out first a couple of months ago. And I know that many of you might want to put your hands on Talent LMS Plus beta, which we would love. So here in your account settings underneath, there is a feedback survey for the Talent LMS Plus beta. And this doesn't go to me, doesn't go to customer success support. It goes straight to the product managers, and they will be able to read your feedback, see what you like, what you don't, what can be improved, what you miss maybe, and then they will be able to just go ahead and based on that continue. So this is pretty much your letter to the product managers instead of just me collecting the feedback. Any final thoughts, any advice? For example, we start as a brand new instructional designer right now, and then we have all of those resources. What do we need to go to look for first?
So if you're starting out as an instructional designer, the very first thing to think about is, how do I create this from the perspective of a learner? What are the things that I would need to be successful to do this job? I think one of the things as a whole, as an instructional designer, is that, and I think as the industry as a whole, is remember why we're here. We're here to help people to perform, whether it's in onboarding, which is the goal is to speed our folks to speed the path to proficiency, or For existing people, it's to increase their productivity, to make them more successful in their jobs. I think we sometimes get so wrapped around the axle of learning objectives, we forget that those learning objectives should map directly to outcomes. What is it that we are trying to achieve? And if you can map your learning objectives to business objectives, to productivity objectives, now you are a learning organization.
And the most important part is not only just to focus on the objective, but again, familiarize yourself with the program that you use, with what
Oh,
tools you
yes.
have. And
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to try to do different things. And like, for example, we call tests in TalentLMS. So we assume those are just for knowledge checks. Instead of saying, oh, wait, this would be a great interaction. So don't be afraid to experiment and use things in a different way than maybe the name suggests or we traditionally think. I think as instructional designers or facilitators, it gets real tempting to write our thesis, right? Or write our great novel.
Yes.
And learners don't need that. Learners need to apply. They need application.
Yes. And one thing that's I will say here as an answer to Wally, who is asking, the beta course you showed looked a lot like Articulate Rise 360, which is one of the tools you use.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my friends, this is exactly the point. That's what we are trying to introduce here. So within the same platform, within TalentLMS, you have an authoring tool. This is our proposal for your authoring tool. So then you can reduce the cost of creating contents because you don't have to rely on external software. And I know that Rise is really good, but then so is Talentcraft, which you already have as part of your account.
Well, yes, and it's also about the democratization of content creation. And here's the thing. Again, I don't know about the rest of the team. We don't always have the resources to support everything that we need to support. Nor do we always have the expertise on the team to do that. So a tool like this is not necessarily designed to replace Articulate, right? Or any of the other hardcore instructional design tools, e-learning design tools. What this does, though, is make it so you don't absolutely 100% have to have it. I remember when LMSs had no authoring tools whatsoever, and you had to build everything in SCORM, right? What this does for us now is we can take a subject matter expert. They can put together the basics, again, a rough draft, and now we can go in and very easily edit the tone, add our learning activities, add the things we've been talking about today that brings it to life. Because it's much faster to do that than to have to write everything from scratch. And that's the purpose of making it accessible to anyone who we designate as a content creator. Right. By the way, that's something that I love too, are the different roles in TalentLMS. So I can give a subject matter expert the ability just to create content. And then I go in, my team goes in, we make it instructionally sound, and now we publish it. So anything that we do to make it easier. And that's, AI will play the same role as a subject matter expert in the workflow I just described.
Yes. And talking about subject matter experts, one question for you as an expert in instructional design, which comes from an anonymous attendee here. So they're asking, How do you feel about a recorded PowerPoint with a quiz after watching? Is there a better way to train the team and incorporate interaction?
Yes, and one of the things that we love to do. So recorded sessions are the bane of my existence because often they're 30 minutes to an hour or longer of just watch this video. And we've already said we learn by doing. So a better option is maybe cut it. If you have a video, great, cut it down into small chunks, small sections, and have an interaction after each session. And the breakdown is the same way you're breaking down your units, is you break it down by content, by topic. So I break this down into topic, I cut the video, I put that up, I watch the video, and then maybe I have a drag and drop interaction. Maybe I have a discussion that's there. Now, if you've got a recording of a very interactive session with lots of discussion, that's great. When there's a question asked to the audience, your video stops, and now you give the person a chance to type out their answer, right? And that's how you talked about using surveys. That's where you'd use a text-based survey. Well, then you can pick up the video of where you're debriefing everybody's responses. So chunking these recordings up and making them into different pieces, that to me, that's a better way of doing it. And if you're recording the PowerPoint on your own, that's easy enough to do. Right? You don't need any additional software, all that. You just publish out that way. And I also, real quickly, please don't feel like you're being judged if you're doing just the videos. How did I learn these things? How did I do all this? By touching the hot stove. Yes, I've been guilty of putting out 90-minute videos of, hey, remember this presentation we did? Remember this interactive session we did? So we're we've all touched that hot stove. Thank you. I hope that helps.
Definitely helps. And every time that you say hot stove, that brings me so many memories and almost, my fingers hurt. But first of all, I would like to thank all of you for sending us questions, because the questions that we received are not just about how this works, how that works. Definitely, Irene has done a brilliant job behind the scenes just for the how-to questions, but also it gives us more value. And especially for me, this is not just a way to bring somebody to talk over on the webinar, but it's a way for us to learn together. And being part of the LMS industry, and especially part of Talent LMS here, I've designed courses. Jason has designed millions of courses. So this is always something that we learn, and by doing so, we learn together. Now, I know that's, Todd is here saying this information has been immensely helpful. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jason, for being with us and for sharing your expertise today.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
And we'd love to have you back. And at the same time,
Anytime.
we would, that's a promise on air. But at the same time, we would love to hear your questions, any questions that come retrospectively. We are here for you. And you can reach us straight by email. That's trainingteam@talentlms.com. So feel free to drop us a message. If you have follow-up questions from what we've heard, feel free to drop us more questions as well. And again, somebody, my anonymous friend here, I know if you're the same person, you've asked very good questions today. They say, my first webinar, and I've learned so much, excited to rework some of my courses to incorporate interaction. Feel free to drop us an email. Thank you so much for your feedback. Now, we have more webinars that you can see in our website. So if you go to talentlms.com/webinars, this is where you'll find, of course, this recording. Again, we're going to send it to you over by email as well. But also you find previous webinars, which we like to call mini trainings as well, because there's short webinars about questions that have been frequently asked. There's hour-length webinars about specific topics, engaging your learners, dive into data with reports. And of course, we are here to create more. So on the chat right now, and also when you close your window, you will see a survey that we invite you to answer. And that is a survey that I'm going to read our team is going to read, and we will try and keep bringing more webinars for you based on topics you like and based on what you would like to explore pretty much in Talent LMS. Thank you, Himanshi, as well, for the nice feedback. They say that they're excited to try the beta, and that was very helpful. We appreciate you. And again, Jason, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's the pleasure's been mine. Thank you, everybody. And thank
Brilliant.
you for all the attendees.
Thank you very much. Happy training to all of you, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.